So if you are a Dungeon Master, or you have been a Dungeon Master in a D&D, and you're looking to get into the Cosmere RPG as a Dungeon Master as well, there's actually quite a lot of differences. And I'm not talking from a mechanical level. I have done a video talking all about that already that you can go and check out up here somewhere. But I'm talking from a level of putting the campaign together itself and understanding the world. So that's what I'm going to be talking about in this video, all of the differences that you need to know as a Dungeon Master. So one of the biggest differences is that D&D is a sandbox fantasy, meaning that it is very easy for you to create your own world, your own environments within D&D, and the rule sets will support that. Whereas in Cosmere RPG, the rules are very tightly woven with the world itself. So at the moment, the only world that is released in the Cosmere RPG is Roshar, and world building elements such as the Spren, Shard Blades, the Knights Radiant are all very much intertwined into the character building element of Cosmere RPG, which means it's very hard for you to be able to make your own world inside Cosmere RPG, and it's really not worth the effort. So you are forced to play within the worlds of Cosmere RPG, which as a DM you might not like. Now it might not be too different to if you play D&D in an existing world already, such as the Forgotten Realms. The biggest difference though is how intertwined the mechanics are with the world building elements, whereas that's not really the case in D&D, even in those existing worlds. So that means, as a DM, you have to understand the world you're going to play in Cosmere RPG pretty well. But I will say, as a player, you don't need to know it as well, because the DM can slowly introduce ideas such as investiture, spren, and stuff like that into the game so that the players can learn it slowly. It just means the DM, as always, is going to have to do more work at the front end. And that leads me nicely onto the magic system. In D&D there's lots and lots of spells and lots of different paths you can take to create a character that they are completely happy with. And in the Cosmere RPG it is highly structured, and just from an amount of spells available point of view there is a lot less. For example, if you wanted to be a wizard in D&D, you could have a specialization of illusion magic, but you can still take evocation, necromancy, whatever other schools of magic you like. But in the Cosmere RPG, once you become a Knights Radiant and you have chosen an order, you are stuck in that. And each order gets 2 surges, so you are stuck with those 2 surges even if you wanted to go to a different one. Now part of this is because in Cosmere RPG you can pick and choose from different heroic paths and make a fundamental character however you want it, and then when you are ready to become a Knights Radiant you choose one and you stick with that, and that is your storyline. Whereas in D&D it's set up in a way where most people will pick one class and it will just be that one class. So if you're a wizard you're probably just going to stick with a wizard. Some people do multi-class, but most people are just going to stick with the wizard. Whereas Cosmere RPG is set up in a way where it's very easy for you to take one level in agent and then take your second level as a windrunner, for example. So I'm not trying to say that one is better than the other, it is just different from a player point of view, and you as the Dungeon Master have to understand this because you will be guiding your players through the decisions. And this is a nice point to talk about setting expectations. In Cosmere RPG, if you are bringing players that know absolutely nothing about the Stormlight Archive books, you need to definitely set the expectations in advance. You should always be setting expectation with players, it doesn't matter what system you are playing. But playing in a world like Roshar is going to feel very different for your players compared to anything else they have played, so you really need to spend some time setting the expectations and making sure they fully understand it and are happy to play with it. Now if we zoom out a bit and look at the systems as a whole, D&D has a lot more emphasis on combat and high fantasy than Cosmere RPG does. Cosmere has more of an emphasis on intrigue and investigation, and although combat is still a thing in Cosmere RPG, there's a lot less emphasis on it than there is in D&D. In an interview with Brandon Sanderson, when talking about making this, he explains that he wanted it so that a character that is completely uncombat orientated can still play in the game and have fun. And the spells and abilities that you have should be able to have just as much of an impact outside of combat as they do inside combat. So from a D&D perspective, I think it means that you have to be able to think on your feet a lot more, as there's a lot more creativity that your players can do to alter the situations. Now once again, you can of course do that in D&D, there's just more of an emphasis on it happening in Cosmere RPG. Now if we jump back into the world elements of you as a GM and what you need to remember, one big thing that I know I'm going to forget to talk about in my descriptions a lot are the idea of sprens. So sprens are cognitive beings that pop up when something they enjoy is happening, such as flame sprens that pop up when there are flames about, or wind sprens that pop up when there's a big gust that's coming through. So when you're doing your descriptions of the scenes, you need to keep in the back of your mind what kind of sprens might be in this environment. Now onto one of the parts of DMing I think I'm going to enjoy the most when playing in Cosmere RPG, and that is how much the world interlinks with the character building of your players. In case you didn't know, to become a Knights Radiant, a player will need to show some kind of ideals in order to bond with a spren, and then they have to physically say the ideals in order to become a Knights Radiant. And there's two ways that you can do this in your game. Firstly, the players could think about what order they want to go into, and then they can play their character with the ideals in mind. Or the alternative, and what I'm excited to do as a DM, is to just have the players play as normal, and then for me to decide which spren wants to bond with them. And then that will lead into what order of the Knights Radiants they become. Now, in order to do this, you have to have a lot of trust with your players. If you're playing with completely new people, I do not advise doing that at all. I'm going to be doing this with some players that I know already trust me, so they will trust me to be able to pick a Knights Radiant order that they will enjoy. And they're all very open-minded and are happy to play pretty much anything in D&D, so doing this in Cosmere RPG is going to be a lot easier. But even if you're doing it the other way and your players are going to be choosing which Knights Radiance order they're going to go into, I still think it's nice as a DM to have them conscious of that, and then what they're doing in the game is going to affect it. And then when they're in the Knights Radiant order, if they start to veer off the path of the ideals, maybe their spren doesn't want to bond with them anymore, and there's a whole storyline there as well. So the game gives us DMs some really cool tools to improve the story and the world building. Now I know I've thrown quite a lot of information at you in this, but just to summarise, here are the main things that are different between DMing in D&D and DMing in the Cosmere RPG. Firstly, you're going to need to understand the lore of the world a lot more than you do in D&D. In D&D, you can sort of bumble through, make it up as you go along, and end up making a homebrew, but you cannot do that in Cosmere RPG. You have to play in one of the worlds in the system. Secondly, the game is a lot less combat focused, meaning players are able to do a lot more outside of combat, and you as a DM are going to have to be better at thinking on your feet when they throw you curveballs. In D&D, there's a lot more emphasis on combat, and there are some very strict rules of what you can do in combat. Whereas having a lot of the game outside of combat and having a lot more abilities able to affect things outside of combat, it is going to open up the game a lot more to you having to improvise, which in my opinion makes it more fun, but a lot of DMs might not enjoy that as much. And the third thing is the player expectations. You really have to set the expectations of how different this is going to be to other systems like D&D before they come into the game, so they're not completely shocked and don't have a clue what's going on. And then the final difference is this game seems to be a lot more about intrigue, investigation and stuff like that outside of combat. So you as a DM are going to have to get comfortable in making those encounters over just another dungeon crawl. Now, as I said earlier in this video, I have made a video talking about the differences from a mechanical point of view of D&D and Cosmere RPG, so go and check that out if you are still not sure.